Hey everyone! Tonight we're diving into one of the most shadowy secrets from history. A period when a woman found reading the wrong book might face being burned at the stake. Picture this. It's 1559, in a town square in Spain, where flames devour not only wood and paper, but also ideas, aspirations, and the core of human inquiry. And here's the surprising detail that might keep you awake. The riskiest readers weren't academics or insurgents. They were everyday women who ventured to possess books, to peruse them covertly, to conceal them in spots you'd least expect. Some of those volumes are still turning up today, tucked away for more than 400 years. So, what exactly were these women absorbing that caused Europe's mightiest organization to quiver in dread? Stick around, because this revelation will upend your views on women, literature, and authority. Before we enter this restricted realm, I could use your quick assistance. If you're someone who thrives on overlooked tales and gets a thrill from enigmatic history, smash that subscribe button now. And if this evening's narrative sends shivers down your spine, and believe me, it will give it a like. Perhaps drop a comment sharing your location and the time there. Are you tucked in bed, on a nighttime drive, or preparing a meal? I'm truly interested in the moments and places these narratives reach you. Okay, lower those lights, settle in comfortably, grab a cup of tea or cocoa, and let's journey back to an era when possessing knowledge posed the greatest peril for a woman. To establish the setting, it's 1559, more than 460 years in the past. Back then, you'd awaken not to a buzzing alarm, but to the tolling of church bells. Your existence would revolve around saints' feasts and crop cycles, rather than calendar years. Looming over it all, like an unrelenting shadow, was the Inquisition. I can guess what you're considering. Another grim tale of the Inquisition. But this is where it becomes compelling, and it's a fact most history volumes overlook. The Inquisition extended beyond pursuing witches or executing heretics publicly. Those sensational events were uncommon. The genuine horror was subtler and more routine. Consider this scenario. Suppose the authorities declared tomorrow that specific books are now prohibited, not merely to purchase, but to possess, to examine, or even to contemplate. Then envision a vast administrative apparatus, akin to the IRS, but dedicated to literature, that could arrive at your doorstep anytime and insist on inspecting your shelves. A single forbidden title could ruin your life. That's the essence of the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the catalog of banned books. On a spring day in 1559, Pope Paul IV issued the inaugural official Roman Index. It was merely a roster, yet this compilation listed over 1,000 works that Catholics were barred from reading under threat of excommunication, which back then equated to eternal damnation. The irony? Many prohibited titles weren't overtly shocking. Prayer manuals, guides to meditation, volumes promoting a direct bond with God, without clerical intervention. But why would the Church fear prayer books? Let me sketch a scene for you. Suppose you're a priest in 1559. For over a millennium, your position has been assured. You're the conduit between common folk and divinity. You interpret the Bible in Latin, a tongue most can't comprehend. You enact the ceremonies. You control the path to redemption. You're indispensable. Abruptly, books proliferate, not painstakingly transcribed manuscripts that demand months and fortunes to produce, but printed editions. Courtesy of Gutenberg's press from a century prior, books are turning, if I may say, nearly accessible. Some suggest that perhaps individuals can pray independently, interpret scripture in their native language, and undergo personal spiritual encounters without your involvement. If you're that priest, your concerns transcend doctrine, you're anxious about your livelihood, your significance, your dominance. And while that's alarming for men engaging with these books, it's exponentially more frightening when women begin perusing them. In the 16th century, there existed this notion, and I wish it were fiction, but records confirm it, that women were more vulnerable to demonic sway. Why? According to contemporary rationale, women were deemed more sentimental, more gullible, more, well, let's acknowledge the medieval outlook wasn't progressive. There was a notorious 1486 text called the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, which contended that women were prone to heresy due to intellectual frailty. I know I winced when I first encountered that, but this is where it turns truly captivating. The Inquisition's meticulous archives, yes, they documented everything, as if thorough records of persecution affirmed their righteousness, reveal they were especially wary of literate women. Not merely readers, but those who possessed books, who maintained collections. Ponder that. In our era, a book-laden person is viewed as learned, refined. In 1559, a woman with numerous books prompted thoughts like, "She's likely a witch," or graver still, "She's reasoning independently," and heaven forbid, quite literally, that a woman reason autonomously. Now, let me describe the fallout from the Index's release. Envision yourself as a nun in a Spanish convent. You've devoted years to amassing a modest personal assortment, perhaps 10 or 20 volumes. Mostly prayer texts, saint biographies, aids for meditation, and drawing nearer to God. These are your prized possessions. In a society where women couldn't hold property, wield influence, or typically testify in court, these books belonged to you. They embodied your inner realm, your secluded domain, the aspect of yourself beyond anyone's grasp. Then, one day, Inquisition agents arrive with the fresh index. They scrutinize your books individually. Abruptly, half your collection is illicit, just like that. Volumes you've cherished for years, prayed alongside, relied upon during nights of uncertainty and dread, they're now contraband. What would you do? Surrender them for incineration? Conceal them? Contend that these texts are sacred? That they've fostered your closeness to God? The issue is, contesting or resisting marks you as a target, signifying you're disputing ecclesiastical power. And disputing power is the gateway to heresy. And heresy culminates in, well, you know the outcome. Thus, most women relinquished their books. And those volumes were burned, not discreetly, but publicly. They intended for you to witness, to observe the fate of prohibited wisdom, to instill fear in you. But, and this is where our narrative truly commences, some women refused. Some gazed at those officials and resolved, absolutely not. Some concealed their books. They established clandestine libraries. They devised intricate methods for covert book sharing. They staked their lives on the written word. Why? Why hazard torment, confinement, even execution, merely to retain a handful of books? I believe the explanation is simpler than it seems. These books symbolized liberty. In a society that deemed women lesser, their opinions irrelevant, their duty, silence, and compliance, books murmured an alternative narrative. Books declared, you possess an intellect, you can acquire knowledge, you can inquire, you can evolve, you count. And that narrative, that was perilous, that was transformative, that was worth perishing for. Let me provide some figures to make this tangible. By 1948, when the Ultimate Index edition appeared, yes, it endured nearly 400 years. It encompassed over 4,000 prohibited titles. 4,000. Contemplate the multitude of concepts, viewpoints, voices muted by that roster. And here's a lesser-known fact. The Index didn't solely prohibit heretical religious writings. It outlawed philosophical tomes, scientific volumes, novels, verse. Any work the censors deemed potentially inciting questions of authority landed on the list. Descartes was there. Galileo, Voltaire, even certain vernacular Bible editions, translations ordinary folks could comprehend were forbidden. But once more, while these renowned men faced bans, women encountered a distinct censorship. Women were frequently barred from publishing initially. Thus, they appear less on the index, not due to lack of writing, but because they had to obscure their authorship entirely. It's like being obliterated before you materialize. Now, envision the terror, not the theatrical fear of arrest or execution at the stake. That's frightening, certainly, but abstract. Picture the daily dread, the apprehension of a door knock, the unease whenever you spot church robes on your street, the worry about neighbors who might denounce you for possessing the wrong book, reading excessively, or posing too many queries. The Inquisition fostered what we'd term a surveillance society. They incentivized mutual informing, offered incentives, framed it as a sacred obligation to report dubious behavior. And dubious behavior could encompass nearly anything regarding women and books. Did a neighbor observe you reading in Spanish rather than Latin? Suspicious. Did someone spot a book not on the sanctioned list? Suspicious. Were you noticed debating concepts with other women? Very suspicious. The climate was one of perpetual distrust. In such a setting, possessing books, particularly for a woman, became a subtle act of revolt. But here's the exquisite aspect, the one that sends shivers through me whenever I reflect on it. It didn't succeed. The Inquisition, with its vast authority, its intimidation strategies, its book pyres and dungeons, and spectacles of execution, it didn't succeed. Women persisted in reading. Women persisted in writing. Women persisted in learning. And crucially, women persisted in concealing books. They stashed them in walls, beneath floorboards, in casks, wells, trunks with false bottoms. They transcribed them manually and disseminated them clandestinely. They committed whole segments to memory, ensuring that even if the book itself perished, the words endured. They forged secret libraries in convents, private residences, locales the Inquisition never considered. And some of those books, those invaluable, hazardous, outlawed books, are still emerging today. Concealed for 400 years, awaiting discovery and revival. That's what the Index truly engendered, not a void of books, but an immense subterranean web of prohibited wisdom, safeguarded and sustained by the very women presumed too frail, too sentimental, too susceptible to manage it. The Inquisition sought to regulate women's reading. Instead, it forged generations of women adept in secrecy and opposition, in safeguarding knowledge against insurmountable odds. And that's merely the onset of our tale. As we conclude this initial segment, linger on this vision. A woman solitary in her chamber, illuminated by a candle, absorbing a book she's forbidden to have. She comprehends the perils. She knows the consequences of discovery. Yet she reads regardless, for the words on those pages convey something the surrounding world never would, that she's capable of comprehension, of learning, of independent thought. That woman's name could have been Teresa. It could have been Christine. It could have been someone whose identity we'll never uncover because she was astute enough to avoid traces. But she was genuine. She lived, and the book she safeguarded, the wisdom she conserved, contributed to molding our contemporary world. In the forthcoming segment, we'll encounter one such woman by name, a woman who forfeited her entire library to the Inquisition's flames, but retaliated by authoring her own volumes, so potent they ultimately canonized her. Her narrative is one of endurance, tactics, and spiritual brilliance, and it commences with a family secret harbored for generations, a secret that could have doomed them all. But that's for the ensuing moments. Remain tuned, for Teresa of Avila is about to enter our narrative, and believe me, you'll want to encounter her. Teresa de Cepeda y Ahumada was 24 when she discovered her family harbored a deception. Not a minor falsehood, not one to spare feelings, the sort that, if exposed, could lead to everyone she cherished being burned alive. It was 1539, and Teresa had been a nun for 3 years at the Carmelite Convent of the Incarnation in Avila, Spain. One evening, she overheard a hushed exchange between two elder kin. They discussed her grandfather, her father's father, a man named Juan Sanchez de Toledo, and what Teresa learned that night would torment her lifelong. Juan Sanchez had been a converso Jew compelled to convert to Christianity. But the twist: the Spanish Inquisition doubted his conversion's authenticity. In 1485, when Teresa's father was a child, the Inquisition tried Juan for Judaizing secretly observing Jewish rites. They'd compelled him to parade through Toledo streets in a yellow San Benito, a garb of disgrace, for 7 consecutive Fridays. They'd robbed him of honor, dignity, all but his life. Then the family did what was necessary. They concealed it, relocated to Avila, acquired a knighthood, altered their tale, and prayed literally that no one would uncover it. You might ponder, why does this signify? Teresa's father was a fervent Catholic. Teresa herself was a nun, for goodness sake. What relevance did her grandfather's history bear? Utmost relevance. In 16th century Spain, Jewish ancestry, even post-conversion, even generations later, rendered you suspect. The Inquisition upheld a notion called limpieza de sangre, purity of blood. It's as unsettling as it implies. They posited that Jewish blood bore an indelible spiritual stain, unerasable even by baptism. And if you were a woman with concealed Jewish roots, experiencing mystical visions, and authoring theology, that was essentially a formula for an Inquisition dungeon. So, when Teresa began encountering what she termed divine meetings visions, voices, instants of spiritual rapture so profound they'd render her insensible, she must have been terrified. Not solely of the visions, which were daunting enough, but of the repercussions if the wrong individuals learned. Because here's the crux: if you were a man with mystical visions, you might be deemed a budding saint. If a woman, you were likely demon-possessed. And if a woman with secret Jewish lineage having mystical visions, you were assuredly a heretic requiring suppression. Let me depict Teresa's existence in the 1550s. She's in her late 30s or early 40s, a nun for roughly 20 years, and she's assembled this small, cherished array of books, perhaps 15 or 20 tomes. That seems scant to us. We might have more on a bedside table. But in Teresa's era, those books signified years of economizing, exchanging, borrowing. Books were costly, truly costly. A solitary volume might equal a month's earnings. Teresa's assortment featured prayer books, meditation guides, compositions by esteemed spiritual authors. There was a volume titled The Third Spiritual Alphabet by Francisco de Osuna that transformed her. It instructed a form of mental prayer that bypassed rote recitations, merely opening one's heart to God. She adored that book, perusing it so frequently the pages disintegrated. Then, in 1559, all altered. Pope Paul IV issued the Index, and nearly instantaneously, half of Teresa's library became unlawful. Envision this instant. You're Teresa, seated in your cell. And yes, nuns inhabited individual cells, cramped spaces scarcely larger than closets. You're gazing at your books, your treasures, the ones that bolstered you through years of uncertainty, ailment, and spiritual strife. And you know tomorrow Inquisition officials will inspect the convent. They'll examine every nun's cell, cross-checking each book against the index. Forbidden finds mean perilous inquiries. What do? Here's Teresa's choice. She surrendered them, nearly all. Her cherished spiritual texts, those teaching prayer, meditation, finding God in stillness, she relinquished them for burning. And they were incinerated publicly in the town square. Volumes that took months to transcribe or fortunes to acquire reduced to cinders. Teresa later wrote of this, her words conveying anguish. She likened it to forfeiting companions, witnessing loved ones executed without intervention. But here's where Teresa exemplifies true valor. She didn't merely accept it. She didn't abandon learning, growth, her spiritual pursuit. Instead, she executed something ingenious. She commenced authoring her own books. Contemplate the boldness. The Inquisition just torched half your library for being overly spiritual, mystical, hazardous. And your retort is to compose even more mystical, radical, perilous works texts, detailing your visions intimately, instructing others in direct divine encounters, sans priests, or official sanction. That's either brilliance or lunacy. For Teresa, likely both. But Teresa was astute, tactical. She grasped the framework she navigated and how to manipulate it. First, she wrote under obedience. Her confessor, the priest, hearing her confessions, commanded her to document her spiritual encounters. This was vital. If authoring stemmed from male ecclesiastical directive, she evaded accusations of presumption. She wasn't posing as educator or theologian. She was merely an obedient nun, complying with orders. Clever, isn't it? Second, she presented her writing as confession, not guidance. Her autobiography's title translates to The Book of Her Life, yet it resembles a Don't Burn Me at the Stake memoir. She's perpetually stating, I'm likely erroneous here, just a wretched woman ignorant of theology, and please, erudite men, amend me if mistaken. But then, and this is the masterful element, she'd trail those modest disclaimers with excerpts of breathtaking theological profundity. She'd delineate prayer states that seasoned theologians couldn't express. She'd dissect spiritual growth phases with scientific accuracy. She'd essentially declare, I'm merely a foolish woman who knows not, then deliver some of the most refined mystical theology ever committed to paper. It's akin to someone claiming, I'm awful at basketball, while slamming a dunk from the free throw line. And the Inquisition, they observed. Naturally, they observed. They always did. Teresa's autobiography reached the Inquisition. They sequestered it for years, scrutinizing for heresy. At one juncture, they compelled her to elaborate, adding vision details, aiming to discern if her experiences were divine, delusional, or demonic. Imagine authoring more on your most private spiritual encounters because the Inquisition mandated it. It's like elucidating dreams to a hostile panel seeking conviction grounds. But here's what Teresa grasped that many didn't. The Inquisition was bureaucratic, sluggish, cautious. If you adhered to rules superficially, displayed due humility, secured influential backers, you could sometimes endure. And Teresa had backers. She befriended Francisco de Borja, Jesuit order head and eventual saint. She corresponded with John of the Cross, another mystic who empathized. She nurtured ties with nobles, bishops, figures vouching for her orthodoxy when the Inquisition probed. She constructed a network, a safeguard, a lattice of alliances that shielded her sufficiently to persist in writing, teaching, disseminating her radical prayer and spirituality notions. Now, here's a lesser-known fact about Teresa's books. They became forbidden themselves. Despite authoring under obedience, framing as humble confessions, they were too potent, too popular, too threatening. Posthumously, several works appeared on local indexes. People read her books and gained ideas. Women particularly read and pondered. If she can undergo mystical experiences, perhaps I can. If she can author theology, perhaps I can. And that's precisely what authorities dreaded. But by then, it was too late. Teresa's books proliferated, copied, translated, circulated covertly. You can't retract that. You can't reseal the genie. Teresa lost her library to censorship flames, so she forged a new one in her own script, with her insights, her spiritual life vision. And that library couldn't be torched because it resided in the hearts and minds of all who absorbed her words. Let me share one more detail about Teresa, as it's what humanizes her across 5 centuries. She was humorous, genuinely witty. Her letters brim with jests, sarcasm, playful banter. There's a famous quote attributed to her, though scholars debate its authenticity, where, while traveling to establish a convent, her cart overturned into a river. She gazed skyward and said, "If this is how you treat your friends, Lord, no wonder you have so few." That's the essence that outlasted the Inquisition, not merely bravery or faith, but humor. The capacity to confront a system meant to crush you and discover something amusing, because laughter is resistance. When you can jest amid fear, find joy amid persecution, you've claimed something oppressors can't seize. Teresa of Avila passed on October 4th, 1582, aged 67. She'd established 17 convents. She'd authored multiple volumes now deemed Christian mysticism classics. She'd endured decades of Inquisition suspicion, probes, and harassment. And in 1970, she became the first woman declared a doctor of the Church. The Catholic Church's admission that she was a brilliant theologian, and they should have heeded her sooner. Better late than never, perhaps. But for our narrative, here's what counts. Teresa demonstrated you could lose your library, yet retain your knowledge. She showed you could operate within an oppressive structure and subvert it. She proved a woman could author theology, teach prayer, wield authority in a world denying her those capacities. And she achieved it while monitored, suspected, and investigated by one of history's most potent censorship tools. If that's not courage, what is? As we conclude this segment on Teresa, reflect on what it signifies to forfeit something cherished and craft something even more valuable instead. Because that's Teresa's feat. The books lost in 1559 were treasures indeed, but those she authored afterward transformed the world. Sometimes our profoundest losses ignite our greatest creations. Now, Teresa wasn't solitary in forging secret libraries, writing in codes, preserving prohibited wisdom. Across Europe, in convents and monasteries, women assembled collections that weren't meant to exist. They duplicated manuscripts by candlelight. They exchanged books via clandestine networks. They established what we'd term a medieval dark web, concealed mechanism for disseminating information authorities sought to suppress. And some convent libraries were enormous hundreds, even thousands of volumes safeguarded by women grasping a core truth. Knowledge is power, and power merits battle. So, let's venture inside those convent barriers. Let's examine what books were stashed in concealed chambers, behind false walls, smuggled into monasteries under night's cover. Let's meet the women who constructed libraries enduring centuries, awaiting revelation of their secrets. Because the saga of women and forbidden books is merely unfolding. Picture a chamber that officially doesn't exist. It's 1470, somewhere in southern Germany, in a convent named St. Katharina in Nuremberg. Behind a false wall, in what seems a storage area, there's a space roughly walk-in closet-sized. And within, stacked floor to ceiling, are books hundreds, perhaps 1,000. Books in Latin, in German, volumes meant for destruction decades prior. Books that, if uncovered, would lead to every woman's arrest in this convent. And here's what will astonish you. This wasn't rare. This occurred throughout Europe. Welcome to the clandestine realm of convent libraries, the underground conduit of medieval wisdom. I know what you're pondering. Convents, really? Aren't those serene locales where women pray daily, transcribe psalters, and brew jam? How did they evolve into custodians of forbidden wisdom? Let me recount a tale historians didn't fully assemble until the 21st century. For ages, academics presumed medieval nuns were marginally literate at best, able to recite basic Latin prayers without grasping them. They weren't intellectuals or scholars. They were simply there, praying, being pious. Finis. Except that narrative is utterly, profoundly, spectacularly erroneous. In 2017, Johns Hopkins University obtained something extraordinary: the Women of the Book collection. It's the largest assemblage of rare books, manuscripts, and documents on early modern women ever compiled in one spot. 400 items from 1450 to 1800. About one-third don't exist elsewhere in North America. Another quarter survive in mere handfuls globally. Some are singular, the sole extant copy. And whence most of these books? Originally, convents, women's monasteries, female religious houses sites, presumed intellectual voids, yet actually safeguarding the very wisdom the external world aimed to obliterate. How did we overlook this so long? Let me return to the 15th century, to a juncture historians dub the Observant Reform Movement. Around 1400, across Europe, monasteries and convents were perceived as lax, complacent. Vows of poverty were ignored amid private rooms with personal kitchens. Constant prayer vows devolved into part-time duties. It was comfortable, secure. Reformers decried this as antithetical to monasticism. Thus, they initiated the observance actually adhering to professed rules. And here's where it ties to our tale. Reformers entering women's convents brought abundant books. They held that genuine spiritual life required educated nuns. They needed to comprehend saints' lives, church fathers' writings, devotional works, mystical texts, not merely read, but grasp, contemplate, discuss. This was radical, affirming women's minds mattered, that women could handle intricate theological concepts, that education wasn't male exclusive. And the nuns embraced it. There's a German scholar, Werner Williams Krapp, who examined Reformed convents in the 15th and 16th centuries. He termed it a literary explosion, a phrase that still evokes chills. In Reformed convents, book production surged dramatically. Not sporadic editions libraries expanded at paces unmatched until 19th century public systems. At St. Katharina in Nuremberg, the library swelled to over 600 German volumes alone, excluding Latin. In the Middle Ages, this was the largest German manuscript collection anywhere, not at a university or cathedral, but a women's convent. And roughly half were hand-copied by the nuns page by page, word by word. Why? Because books were power, freedom, the one element these women controlled in a world dictating everything else. Now, let's explore how these convent libraries functioned, as it's both intriguing and cunning. First, convents developed an interloan system. If Nuremberg had a book Bavaria desired, they'd lend it via traveling friar, courier, or trusted laywoman en route. During the loan, the borrowing convent might duplicate it entirely, so one book becomes two become four. Knowledge proliferates like a beneficial virus of enlightenment. Suddenly, dozens of copies exist of a text meant rare and controlled. Church authorities knew and attempted halts, issuing decrees against unpermitted loans. But enforcement was inconsistent. Monitoring loans across Europe's hundreds of convents? Impossible. The system was too decentralized, organic, ingenious. Second, convents cultivated specialized collections. Some emphasized mystical literature, others medical texts, as nuns often managed hospitals and required healing knowledge. Some amassed music manuscripts, for proficient liturgy singing demanded musical expertise. Some even gathered secular literature poetry, philosophy, histories. And they didn't merely collect. They curated, deciding preservation worth. They annotated margins, debating theology, or adding reflections. These weren't passive depots, but dynamic intellectual arenas where women interacted with ideas. Let me offer a concrete example to make this vivid. There's a Venetian convent, Corpus Domini, in 1395. A nun named Bartolomea Riccoboni maintained a chronicle of daily convent life from 1395 to 1436. This chronicle endured and was translated into English in the 1990s by scholar Daniel Bornstein. Upon studying it, Bornstein uncovered the unexpected. Corpus Domini nuns weren't solely praying and sewing in quietude. They were profoundly involved in contemporaneous politics. They concerned themselves with the papal schism when 3 men claimed papacy. They opined on church councils, tracked international affairs, knew worldly events, and cared. How? Books, letters, visitors bearing news. These women forged an information web linking them to Europe-wide occurrences. Bornstein writes and I adore this. Far from being closed in upon themselves and interested exclusively in their own spiritual lives, the Sisters of Corpus Domini were deeply engaged in the world beyond their walls. Isn't that lovely? These women, presumed isolated and ignorant, were cosmopolitan and informed. They read, learned, discussed, debated. They were intellectuals, and this transpired in convents Europe-wide. Now, here's where the plot intensifies. With the 1500s Reformation, and especially the 1559 Index, these convent libraries abruptly became highly perilous. Recall, many collected books were mystical texts on direct divine communion, prioritizing personal prayer over ritual. In the Counter-Reformation's paranoid milieu, these resembled Protestant heresy. So what did nuns do? Hand over libraries for burning? Some did, complying from fear or conviction. Those libraries are lost. We'll never know their wisdom reduced to ash. But other convents innovated. They erected false walls, hidden rooms. They maintained dual sets, one for display, approved texts for inspectors. Another concealed the true library, valued reads. They devised codes. A letter saying, "We're praying especially for Sister Margaret's health," might signify, "Sending that forbidden book with Sister Margaret next Tuesday." They employed trusted intermediaries, lay people, friendly clergy, reform-minded bishops to relocate, hide, secure books. Essentially, they became book smugglers, trafficking contraband literature via safe houses that were convents. Can you envision these women, supposedly renounced the world, vowed to obedience, meant meek and submissive? They ran an underground resistance with books as weapons. There's a splendid example from England illustrating these networks' sophistication. When Henry VIII severed from Rome in the 1530s and dissolved monasteries, many English nuns fled continent-ward to Belgium, France, Portugal, re-establishing communities. And fleeing, they carried books, not any, but chosen judiciously, liturgical for worship, order histories and spirituality, novice training aids. Some were ancient 1300s, 1400s manuscripts, irreplaceable gems, and they succeeded. Those books endured. Some now in libraries bear inscriptions narrating journeys. This book belonged to the Benedictine convent at Brussels, brought from England in 1598. From the library of the Brigittines at Lisbon, preserved by the nuns who fled persecution. These inscriptions are messages in bottles across centuries. We were here. We saved this. We mattered. Now, I want to pause and consider what these libraries signified personally, intimately, to their builders. Because it's easy to view this distantly and think, nice historical note women had books in convents. Cool. But contemplate what books represented to these women. In the 1500s, women's options were limited. Marriage meant legal ownership by husband. He could beat you, seize property, dictate your life. Or nunhood, forgoing marriage, children, cultural womanly purpose. But in exchange, rare, precious autonomy. In convents, you could own property, decide, have careers as teacher, hospital administrator, librarian, scholar. You could forge female friendships unmediated by men. And foremost, an intellectual life. These convent books weren't mere objects. They unlocked alternate existence. Proof you could think, learn, transcend societal expectations. Hope in paper and ink. When the Inquisition hunted forbidden books, threatening that away, is it surprising these women resisted? Hiding in walls, smuggling between cities, risking punishment to keep libraries intact? They weren't saving books alone. They saved themselves, identities, possibilities. Here's what haunts me. We'll never know how many convent libraries were destroyed, how many books burned, confiscated, or lost when convents closed. Scholars estimate only 10% of medieval manuscripts survive. 10%, meaning 90% of Middle Ages writings vanished, and women's convent books were particularly vulnerable. When Henry VIII dissolved England's monasteries, women's houses were targeted first smaller, less politically potent, easier to quash, their books confiscated, auctioned, shredded for scrap, kindling, an intellectual holocaust, a genocide of ideas. But here's the miracle. Some survived against odds, through wars, persecution, neglect. Some convent libraries persisted, still teaching, showing women's capabilities, proving official history erred. As we exit these hidden library chambers, these secret knowledge sanctuaries, contemplate the courage to build, maintain, fight for them. These weren't famed women, mostly not queens, saints, vision-bearing mystics. They were ordinary nuns. Sister Margareta, copying manuscripts 40 years. Sister Anna, smuggling between cities. Sister Katharina, erecting a false wall for dangerous volumes. Their names mostly lost, but legacy endures. Every scholar opening a surviving manuscript, finding a 1487 nun's marginal note, every hidden inscription or provenance mark discovered, we hear their voices across time. They say, "We read, we thought, we mattered, don't forget us." And we won't. But these convent libraries weren't solitary spots for women amassing forbidden knowledge. While nuns created sanctuaries within religious confines, other women, secular, noble, even queens assembled personal libraries rivaling universities. They gathered books challenging authority, pushing limits, opening new thought avenues. And one woman particularly emerges as perhaps the Middle Ages' most exceptional bibliophile, a woman who not only collected but authored books, wielding literature as weaponry, showing a woman's pen mightier than any sword. Her name was Christine de Pizan, and she's about to enter our story with a query echoing centuries. If women had authored history, what would they have conveyed? Paris, 1390. A 25-year-old widow sits in a cramped room amid her most valued belongings, not jewels or furnishings, but books, dozens, perhaps over 100 already, with plans for more. Her husband died 3 years prior. She has 3 children, a widowed mother, a niece, all reliant on her. No inheritance, her husband's kin seized all. By medieval French law, she essentially non-existent. Widows lacked legal rights, couldn't own property sans male guardian, certainly couldn't earn via intellectual labor. Yet this woman is poised to achieve what no European woman had: become a professional writer, not a nun scribbling spare time, not a noble dabbling poetry as pastime, a professional sustaining herself, well, through words. Her name is Christine de Pizan, and by her story's end, you'll grasp why she matters, not solely to our secret library's tale, but to women's intellectual freedom history. But here's the twist enhancing her tale. Christine wasn't French-born. Christine entered the world in Venice in 1364, daughter of Tommaso da Pizzano, physician and astrologer. Around age 4, her father received a lifetime offer. King Charles V of France invited him to Paris as royal astrologer and physician. This was medieval equivalent of Google recruitment irrefusable, so the family relocated. Young Christine matured in Europe's most intellectual court. Charles V was book-obsessed, building France's first royal library, with over 900 volumes, medieval Library of Congress equivalent. Christine's father accessed it, thus Christine did. Here's where Christine lucked out, unlike most medieval girls. Her father advocated educating daughters, unusual, profoundly so. Most 1300s men viewed girl education between futile and perilous. But Tommaso da Pizzano harbored the radical notion his daughter's mind deserved cultivation. He taught her, permitted royal library reading, introduced court-visiting scholars. By teens, Christine read Latin, Italian, French. She'd studied poetry, philosophy, history, science, a liberal arts education, informally via books and mentors valuing her. Then marriage at 15 era's norm to young nobleman Etienne du Castel. Here Christine lucked again. Her husband encouraged continued study, bought books, supported intellectual pursuits. By accounts, they truly loved. Rare in arranged marriage age-like lottery win. For 10 years, Christine lived her happiest phase. Good marriage, healthy kids, financial stability, boundless book access. She built a library rivaling minor nobles. All perfect. Then her husband succumbed to plague. He 34, she 25. Overnight, all changed. Here's what ensued: a masterclass in survival via intellectual ingenuity. First, husband's kin claimed estate, arguing widows couldn't manage property, dragging her to court repeatedly, draining resources and vigor. Second, Christine pursued owed funds from husband's court roll, but medieval bureaucracy, slow, corrupt, woman-hostile, yielded naught after years. Third, supporting self. 3 kids, mother, niece, 6 dependents, no income. So, what if you're a 1390 widow sans rights, inheritance, wealthy kin, but with education, books, writing ability? Become a writer, professional, sell words. Christine began with poetry, mostly love poems, court popular. But hers had flair, technically adept, emotionally resonant, addressing loss, grief, longing, hope relatable to all. Within years, patrons emerged, nobles commissioned poems. She earned not much initially, but family-sustaining. Then ambition struck. In 1399, she penned something commanding court attention: Epistle to the God of Love, defending women against era's misogynistic literature. See, there was The Romance of the Rose, portraying women as deceitful, lustful, manipulative temptresses, hugely popular. Men quoted it socially. Christine retorted, "No, this is erroneous slander. I'll prove it." The epistle attacked the romance, arguing flawed female depictions stemmed from male-authored stories. If women wrote, perhaps different portrayals. Problem isn't women, but men writing about them. Scandal ensued, a productive one, sparking talk, debates, sides. Scholars discussed her ideas, some supportive, some vicious, but all read her. Christine found her niche: the woman who retorts, defends women, voices unspoken female thoughts, and she'd need many books for it. Over 30 years, Christine authored over 40 works: poetry, philosophy, political theory, military strategy. Yes, she penned the Book of Deeds of Arms and of Chivalry, so effective it was English translated, used by commanders. Biographies, allegories, royal letters, education treatises. She wrote ceaselessly, prolifically, brilliantly. To do so, she required sources quoting ancient philosophers, church fathers, classical poets, historical chronicles, proving she wasn't merely opinionated, but research scholar. So Christine built a library, a serious research one. At career peak, scholars estimate 200-300 books. Perspective: Early 1400s University of Paris Library held about 700. Christine's personal collection neared one-third a major universities as private individual, woman, widow, sans income save writing earned. How afforded? Partly earnings, but also borrowing, trading, networking with book owners, permitting research loans. Christine excelled at networking, knowing Parisian intellectual elite, borrowed from nobles, royal library, monasteries, copied needed sections, returned originals, became one-woman research institute. Now, the book making Christine Europe famous, ensuring 600-year survival. The Book of the City of Ladies, 1405. Christine 41, 15 years professional writing. She undertook something audacious, unprecedented, systematic defense of women's intellect, virtue, capability via historical evidence. The book is allegorical. 3 virtues, reason, rectitude, justice, appear to Christine, instructing her to construct a city, metaphorical refuge for worthy women shielded from misogynistic calumnies. To build, Christine recounts great women's tales throughout history. Page after page, chapter after chapter, she lists brilliant, brave, creative, powerful women, wisely ruling queens, discovering scholars, beauty-creating artists, defending warriors, draws from classical mythology, ancient history, Christian hagiography, contemporary events, cites sources, builds arguments, constructs irrefutable case. Women always capable of greatness. If unknown, men authored histories, omitting women. Here's a favorite passage where Lady Reason explains women's public life absence. Paraphrasing Middle French, raise girl and boy identically, same education, opportunities, encouragement. They'll prove equally capable. Women's seeming lesser accomplishment isn't nature, but nurture, society, birth-told girl's role. Quiet, obedient, unambitious. This 1405, over 600 years ago. Christine articulated ideas mainstream feminism wouldn't embrace until 20th century. Mind-blowing. But understand, Christine wrote using her library. No inventions, researched, poured through classical authors like Petrarch, medieval chronicles, saints' lives, Roman Greek histories, found every remarkable woman example compiled into impossible-to-dismiss argument based on critics' respected sources. That's why Christine's library mattered. Sans those books, knowledge access, she couldn't argue. She'd be another opinionated woman, easily dismissed. But with library, research, chapter and verse citation, she became seriously regarded. Used books as weapons, shields, proof of speaking right. It worked. The Book of the City of Ladies was a bestseller or pre-printing equivalent. Hand-copied, distributed Europe-wide, multilingual translated. Queens, noblewomen owned copies. Inspired women to write, argue, self-defend against cultural misogyny. Christine turned personal tragedy, widowhood, poverty, legal battles into platform. Used books for career and movement. Now, heartbreaking. Christine's library fate unknown. Post-1430 death. Books vanished historically. Some sold, perhaps in royal noble collections. Some destroyed amid 100 Years' War, raging at death. Point, incredible collection 40-year built, representing her fights, beliefs lost. But what survived? Her books, her writings. Those kept ideas alive. This paradox central to secret libraries, forbidden book story. Physical books destroyable, libraries burnable, collections scatterable, but ideas harder to kill. Once written, released, ideas live independently copied, translated, quoted. You can't retract. Christine's physical library gone, but intellectual legacy endures, still shaping women's education, written word power views. Let me share personally. First reading the Book of the City of Ladies in college, I wondered how I'd never heard of her. Through education years, literature, history classes, none mentioned 1405 Feminist Manifesto via meticulous research. Then realized that's Christine's point. Women erased from history not for absence or unimportance, but male historians deemed stories unworthy. Christine knew, fought erasure, wrote much insistently, ensured work widely distributed, copied, preserved, fought women's voices unforgettable. Here we are 600 years later, discussing, reading, learning from her. She won. But Christine fought not solely herself, but all women wanting read, write, think, access knowledge. And her era's fight grew dangerous. Early 1400s, church increasingly wary of literate laity, especially women. Growing fear, independent reading might foster independent scripture interpretation, unclerical religious experiences, authority questioning. Printing press 50 years away, but manuscripts circulated widely. Education spread beyond monasteries, universities. Authorities cracked down. Decades post-Christine's death saw witch hunts killing tens thousands women Europe-wide. Inquisition power rise, index publication. World grew far more perilous for book-loving women. So question how women hide books. How keep libraries secret when wrong book could arrest or worse? What tricks, techniques, ingenious methods developed to protect prized possessions? That's our next direction into hidden spaces, false walls, secret compartments, physical reality concealing knowledge in destruction-seeking world. Into art, and it was art of hiding books plainly. Because if prior stories seem clever, wait till what women did needing make books vanish. Imagine a 16th century bedroom. Small, sparsely furnished. Bed, chest, perhaps chair. Wall-hung crucifix. Small table with Book of Hours open to day's prayers. All seems perfectly normal, pious, legal. But then you notice, wall sounds hollow on tap. One corner's floorboards misalign. Chest deeper outside than inside, and pressing specific bed frame spot, hidden compartment opens. Inside, books. Books risking owner's arrest. Books officially forbidden. Books meant burned years ago. Welcome to Resistance's secret architecture. Welcome to Hidden Books world. Before delving in genius concealment ways, understand. This exceeded mere hiding. It created parallel world knowledge surviving. Required planning, creativity, courage, cunning rivaling modern spies. These women weren't readers alone, smugglers, architects, cryptographers, resistance fighters. And methods developed, some still discovered today, revealing 400-year secrets. Start with simplest trick. False book spines. Genius, right? Worked thus. Take forbidden book, say mystical text on index. Carefully remove original spine cover. Create new, making it innocent. Perhaps worn prayer book cover, housekeeping treatise, or favorite cookbook. Imagine Inquisition inspector scanning shelf. Sees complete guide to preparing fish for Lent. Boring, approved, moves on. Unaware inside binding is Marguerite Parate's The Mirror of Simple Souls, mystical text staking author in 1310, banned centuries. You might think, Wouldn't they open, check? Yes, sometimes. Why clever disguises sophisticated. Keep innocent book's first page's title. Perhaps fish cooking intro bind forbidden text behind. Quick flip shows expected. Actual read several pages reveals contraband. Like spy novels hiding documents plainly but real. Happening bedrooms, libraries, convents Europe-wide. But false covers mere start. Let's discuss miniature books, truly fascinating. 15th, 16th centuries saw tiny book boom. Really tiny palm fitting, some needing magnifier. Smallest surviving thumbnail sized. Why tiny? Officially portability pocket fitting book of hours for anywhere prayer. Practical, right? But also easily hidden. Tuck in dress hem, hollowed bread loaf, kitchen bean pot if searched. Swallow if desperate hope none did. Another advantage, less material. Hand copying forbidden text. Tiny meant less parchment, paper, ink, time. Produce more copies faster. Distribute widely. Hide easily. Some scholars think 16th century miniature boom not fashion convenience, but censorship response. As Inquisition cracked down, books shrank surviving. Poetic, suppression attempts made knowledge smaller, portable like catching smoke with hands. Now hidden compartments, where women showed ingenuity. Medieval Renaissance furniture, heavier, solid, often custom crafted. With money, connections, request craftsmen build secret compartment. Chests popular. Outside certain volume, say 3A2 feet, inside only 2.5 feet deep. Extra 6 inches. False bottom back, double walls, space for slim volumes. Beds even better. Bed frame big, bulky, none moves, inspects closely. Hollow bedposts, slide-rolled manuscripts. Headboard compartments. False bed base, bottom stores, flat books. Brilliant! Who searches woman's bed thoroughly? Especially male officials. Scandalous. So bed's safest hiding spots. Women knew. Used. Documented 1560s Spain case. Inquisition search suspected heretic woman's home. Reported owning prohibited books. Found nothing. Months later, post-natural death. Relatives dismantled bed selling. Inside post, 4 forbidden books, including Spanish Protestant Bible. Died secret intact, but furniture just beginning. Let's discuss architecture walls, floors, spaces between. Medieval Renaissance buildings different. Thick walls, sometimes 2+ feet, especially stone. Between inner-outer surfaces, often empty space for hiding. Women, especially convent nuns, experts utilizing. Worked with sympathetic builders, craftsmen, creating hidden niches. Sometimes small single-book fitting, sometimes larger wall cavity shelves, accessed via indistinguishable panel. Trick: undetectable access panel, no obvious seams, hinges. Use press-in panels, sliding, disguised as decoration twisting carved wooden rosette reveals compartment. Floor same, wooden floor, liftable board reveals beneath space. Ensure matches other boards wear. Discoloration. Some deliberately high-traffic hiding spots, natural wear blending. Think planning, foresight required. Couldn't hastily assemble hiding spot. Consider sightlines, traffic, search thoroughness, years ahead. Now, mind-blowing. 1934. Less 100 years ago. English family cleaning country house. Opened ping-pong table cabinet storing equipment. Back, under old nets, paddles, manuscript. The book of Margery Kempe, mentioned earlier. Earliest English autobiography, 1430s. 500 years lost. Scholars knew existed excerpts, but full text gone. assumed destroyed. Except wasn't. Hidden 500 years in ping pong cabinet. Cabinet recent ping pong late 1800s invention. But someone hid precious book house somewhere. Over centuries, house changed hands. Rooms reorganized. Furniture moved. Book ended unlikely places till ping pong cabinet. Forgotten. But matters. Someone decided book needed hiding. Perhaps Reformation Catholic text destruction. Perhaps English Civil War. Perhaps old, valuable, protect. We don't know. But choice, well hidden, survived wars, fires, upheavals, cleanings. We have Margery's voice today. Read her words. Hear her story. That's hiding power. Not protecting paper, ink protecting voices across time. This technique shows in medieval, Renaissance manuscripts. Women writing names in acrostics, word puzzles, marginalia seeming decorative but messaging. Sometimes, this book belongs to Sister So-and-so. Sometimes subversive. Official interpretation wrong. Here's real meaning. Having marginal conversations only other literate women recognize, understand. Then desperate measures when all failed. Burial literal. Documented women burying books, gardens, forests, churchyards, oiled cloth, leather-wrapped, wax-sealed pottery jars, like treasure hoping someday, when safe, they, daughters, granddaughters, dig up. Sometimes worked. Famous Egypt case. Over 200,000 Jewish manuscript fragments in Cairo, Geniza, stored from year 1000, forgotten 900 years. Late 1800s exploration yielded medieval Jewish life, literature trove. Some deliberately hidden from censorship, destruction. Some stored per Jewish law forbidding God's name destruction. Result same. Books survived hidden centuries. In Europe, occasional buried book discoveries. Renovating old house finds pottery jar manuscripts under floorboards. Garden digging unearths leather satchel books. Not common most rotted lost, but occurrence shows desperation preserving forbidden knowledge. Willing bury books like seeds, hoping future harvest. Now, most moving about hiding techniques. Required community, trust, networks, women aiding each other, protecting secrets. Hiding in walls needs trustworthy builder. False covers needs trusted bookbinder. Burying needs location shared or dies with you. Coded annotations needs women reading codes, not solitary resistance collective. Women creating systems, teaching techniques, passing hiding knowledge, did generations. Mother showing daughter hidden compartment. Senior nun teaching novice disguising forbidden book. Women group agreeing code discussing dangerous topics, sans intercepted letter fear. Built secrecy infrastructure, resistance architecture spanning continents, centuries. And it worked, not always, perfectly. Many books destroyed, many women caught, punished. But enough survived, enough knowledge preserved. Enough voices traversed fires, fear reaching today. So stepping from hidden compartments, false walls, buried treasures, think what means hide something surviving centuries. What means protect idea care people 400 years later here. Not survival tactics alone, faith acts. Faith future better. Faith someday books emerge hiding. Faith knowledge once hidden not lost. Just sleeping, awaiting right moment awaken. And they write. Now, we've discussed all this hiding, but not what they read. What books worth hiding? What texts so dangerous, precious women risk all keeping? That's next into secret libraries content. Books, monasteries secretly copied. Convents defiantly passed despite orders. Books about mystical experiences, yes, but also medicine, science, history. Books teaching women could think, create, exceed societal limits. Because what as important as how? And some books still controversial today. There's a 2017 moment changing historians' medieval women understanding forever. Johns Hopkins curator Earl Havens stood before classroom holding small, thick book brown animal hide-bound, elaborate floral tooling, pocket-sized, few inches tall, several thick. Opened showing medieval musical notation inside, student doctoral candidate Oria Mednansky gasped. She'd seen descriptions years prior, researching 12 medieval Jesus life texts for dissertation, traveled 25 plus Europe to U.S. libraries, tracking copies. One 15th century German convent processional desperately sought. Sold mid-1900s private collector, vanished scholarly view. Assumed never see. Lost history, locked private collection, inaccessible researchers. Yet here professors' hands, university, because Johns Hopkins acquired something rewriting women, books, religious life, Middle Ages knowledge, women book collection, and pocket-sized processional 1-400 items, blowing doors, medieval female intellectualism understanding. Let me tell found. Women book collection, specifically Catholic religious women nuns primarily, but mystics, miracle workers, lay religious order, female members, living, working institutional church, roughly 1450-1800. Might wonder, didn't discuss convent libraries already? Yes, but this different not libraries themselves, explosion writing, copying, publishing, intellectual activity, female monasteries, Renaissance, early modern. About women not reading books, creating many fundamentally shaped Europe literary, religious culture. Stunning. 1/3 items non-existent elsewhere, North American libraries. 1/4 survive handful copies worldwide. 20% unique souls surviving copy world. Think means sans collection, lost, destroyed. No record women wrote, thought, experienced, believed. Voices silenced, but not. Here, stories tell, make reconsider everything thought, new women, dark ages. Start number seeming impossible. Late Middle Ages, 1400s, 1500s, female monastic communities joining reform movements, boom. Touched earlier. Reformed convents, serious education, literacy, book creation. Scholars discovered, though only 10% convents joined reforms, those 10% produced 90% period manuscripts. Read again. 10% convents, 90% manuscripts. Not copying centers alone, intellectual powerhouses. Places women writing original works, translating Latin vernacular, composing poetry, chronicling community histories, creating devotional literature, preserving forbidden knowledge. Werner Williams Krapp, German scholar studying phenomenon called literary explosion. Exactly. Explosion, female creativity, intellectual activity, quietly convent walls, male establishment, mostly inattentive, until suddenly, because some women famous, really famous. Let me introduce someone making Teresa of Avila seem almost conventional. Name Maria Maddalena de Pazzi, lived 1566-1607, Florence, Italy. Carmelite nun, like Teresa. But while Teresa wrote visions herself, Maria Maddalena different, dictated ecstatic trances. Picture. Maria Maddalena fall mystical states, completely unaware surroundings. Trances start speaking hours sometimes, voices not own. Speak as Christ, Virgin Mary, Holy Spirit. Other nuns follow notebooks, frantically transcribing every word. Filled 5 volumes ecstatic utterances, thousands words. Transcribed nun teams recognizing Maria Maddalena's experience, whatever. Important preserve. These books published, printed, Europe distributed. Maria Maddalena became era's famous mystics. Transcribed works read kings, queens, popes, ordinary believers seeking enlightenment. Church eventually sainted her. Books, libraries, paintings, sculptures commissioned. Woman spent adult life locked Florentine convent, became international celebrity. But matter's story, none happened sonned women writing words. Scribes, nuns with education, literacy, devotion, preserve Maria Maddalena experienced. Female literacy made female mysticism possible. Female mysticism became female power form. Now let's discuss what nuns actually reading, writing, far diverse might think. Yes, devotional works, prayer books, psalters, saints' lives. Expect, right? Holy women reading holy books, sense, but also reading, copying medical texts. Many convents ran hospitals, infirmaries. Can't heal sans knowledge. So nuns collected medical manuscripts, herb properties, books, surgery, anatomy texts. Some nuns became renowned physicians, treating sisters, surrounding communities. Reading, copying music manuscripts. Medieval liturgical music, complex elaborate polyphonic compositions, requiring serious musical education, perform correctly. Nuns needed read notation, understand harmonies, teach younger nuns sing, collected, copied music manuscripts, some beautifully decorated artworks themselves. Reading histories, chronicles own, communities, wider world. Venice Convent, Corpus Domini. Bartolome Riccoboni kept chronicle not unusual. Many convents did. Records daily life, major events wars, plagues, papal elections, important visitors. Nuns documenting world, creating primary historical sources scholars use today. And perhaps most surprisingly, reading secular literature poetry, philosophy, classical texts. Not officially, perhaps not advertised, but reading. No, because some survive convent libraries, often women's handwriting, marginal notes showing engaging ideas, nothing prayer, piety. Short, educated, broadly, intellectually curious, hungry knowledge all forms. Let me tell book perfectly capturing intellectual diversity. Commonplace book. Basically, personal journal, copying passages, read books, adding thoughts, pasting images, letters, creating intellectual life scrapbook. One late 1500s Southwellsthorpe commonplace book, absolutely fascinating. Compiled women, recusant Catholic family. England refused, join Protestant Church England, faced persecution. What's inside? Everything, prayers, yes, recipes, medical remedies, poetry, religious, secular, letter copies, legal documents, mathematical calculations, drawings, jokes, wild, eclectic mix, high-low culture, sacred, profane, practical, philosophical. Exactly expect intelligent, curious people, religious persecution conditions, preserving valued, case lost. And women created these. Compiled, added, past generations. Commonplace books, Windows female intellectual life. Show women's minds not confined narrow religious channels, wandering everywhere, absorbing everything, connecting knowledge domains. Now, here's Women Book Collection gets really interesting. About half items hagiographies saints' lives, but not any saints, female saints, holy women, mystics, miracle workers. Reading, notice patterns. Holy women not passive, meek, obedient praying all day, dying peacefully. Complicated, difficult, powerful women defying authority, arguing bishops, performing uncomfortable miracles, refusing societal boxes. There's St. Catherine Siena, telling popes what do, calling bad decisions. St. Hildegard Bingen, writing music, medicine, theology, natural science, preaching tours, 60s unheard woman. Margery Kempe, mentioned before, pilgrimaging Europe-wide, repeatedly heresy arrested, talking out every time. These hagiographies models showed women possibilities, said, "Look, these women defied expectations, became saints, difficult okay, challenged authority, God their side. You can too." Reading powerful women created more powerful women. Simple. Nuns, new collected, copied, distributed hagiographies, read aloud meals, building tradition, female strength lineage stretching centuries. But here's dangerous part and always dangerous part, isn't. Some holy women's writings theologically adventurous, pushed boundaries, said things making church authorities nervous. Take Marguerite Porete, mentioned briefly, wrote Mirror Simple Souls, late 1200s. Beautiful, complex, mystical text, soul-God relationship. Argued once soul-certain God union level. No longer needed church sacraments, priests, mediation. Relate God directly. Imagine church reception. Declared heretical. Demanded recant. Refused. 1310, burned stake, Paris in Book 2. Except didn't really burn book copies survived, circulated. Twist, later copies sans name. People assumed male theologian authored. Anonymous form, widely read, admired. Even recommended spiritual directors, female pupils. So Marguerite Porete's ideas got her killed spread anyway. Spread under radar, hidden plain sight, none realized written woman executed heresy. Nuns read book centuries, learning, inspired, never knowing author burned writing it. Shows female monasticism preserved dangerous knowledge. Sometimes nuns didn't know how dangerous. Let me share fascinates about women book collection. Among 400 items, dozens prayer books, unique musical notations. Not any unique compositions non-existent elsewhere. Means nuns composing original music, creating new prayer melodies, psalm harmonies, liturgical text musical interpretations, writing compositions, preserving, teaching younger nuns. But don't know who composed most music. Manuscripts sans composer names. Anonymous. Why? Partly humility virtue, signing work prideful, but partly honest. Woman claiming original creation might trouble. Safer anonymous, safer circulate sans name. So gorgeous medieval music preserved convent libraries, definitely women composed, but never know which. Names lost, music survives. Every time performs piece today, early music ensemble discovers anonymous composition, brings life nameless nuns speak centuries. Hearing voices, even scenes names. Beautiful, heartbreaking. Now something seeming contradiction. Convents producing incredible intellectual work writing, copying, creating, preserving, becoming female learning, creativity centers. An exact time, church authorities increasingly nervous educated women, especially reading mystical texts, claiming direct God experiences. So happened? How convents keep operating, creating, building libraries. Inquisition hunting women wrong books. Answer: protected. Convents officially sanctioned institutions, approval local bishops. Long followed rules publicly, degree legal protection. Individual women lacked. Like law against free speech, university campuses exempt. Universities debate controversial ideas within boundaries. Kind convents, protected spaces, hostile environment. But protection always fragile, dependent right bishop, connections, political support, withdrawable anytime. Nuns walked delicate line, intellectuals presented humble, obedient, creating knowledge, framed God service, sometimes subversive, subtle. Playing system undermined system did centuries. Here's something bringing tears every think. Johns Hopkins collection first cataloged, researchers found inscriptions, many books, personal notes, ownership marks, messages none to another. Things like, this book given Sister Maria by Sister Anna Feast St. Catherine, 1542, token Sisterhood Christ. Or, I, Sister Elizabeth, copied text Nuremberg Library our community use, may bring wisdom all read. Or simply, remember me prayers. Inscriptions show books, not objects, women gifts, love acts, connections, sisters, communities, time. Nun giving another book, giving knowledge, power, freedom. Saying, trust this, believe capable understanding, value mind. Those messages, written 500-year-old book margins, still speak. Still saying, we hear, learned, taught, loved, mattered, don't forget us. Because books survived. Women fought preserve. Even authorities said women shouldn't read, write, think. Women kept reading, writing, thinking. Built intellectual communities sustaining persecution, censorship, erasure. Communities left legacy still uncovering today. As close female monastic literacy chapter, hold image. Room nuns bent writing desks, candlelight, copying manuscripts. Hands cramped hours work. Eyes tired, keep going, no work matters. Preserving past, yes. Creating future. Ensuring knowledge survives, women's voices survive, ideas survive. But monastic communities, not only women fighting, preserve books. While Catholic nuns building libraries, institutional church, other women Protestant, dissenting, beliefs outside official structures, also creating libraries, preserving texts, fighting read right. Some exile, fleeing homelands, creating new communities, foreign lands, practicing faith, preserving books, sans fear. That's heading next. Across English Channel, World English Catholic Convents exile. Women fled carrying precious books, built new libraries, places like Belgium, France, Portugal, creating underground railroad forbidden texts lasting generations. Because women's secret libraries story, not individuals, single communities. About networks, connections, international movements, women helping women preserve knowledge. Nowhere clearer than English Convent's exile story. It's 1598, small English women group standing Dover Dock, watching white cliffs fade. Nuns, or trying be nuns, now crime Protestant England. Wearing plain civilian clothes avoid detection, but hidden skirts, oilcloth wrapped, specially sewn pockets. Books. Dozens. Some printed, some manuscript, some old pages, brittle, brown. Books survived Henry VIII's monastery dissolution 60 years earlier. Books hidden attics, buried gardens, secretly passed hand decades. These women refugees, fleeing religious persecution, bringing library. Over next 100 years, Thousands English Catholic women, same journey. Crossed Channel Belgium, France, Portugal, anywhere re-establish communities, practice faith openly. Almost all brought books. Because rebuild convent, scratch find building, recruit members, establish routine. But rebuild library generations. Better carry precious volumes, even risking customs, traveling heavy suspicious cargo arrest. These women understood fundamental. Convent sans books, not really convent, just building women praying. Books make community learning, growth, intellectual, spiritual depth, smuggled libraries, international borders. Doing so created one remarkable book preservation network's European history. Let me set stage. If unfamiliar English Reformation history seems wild, 1534, King Henry VIII broke Catholic Church Pope wouldn't grant annulment. No part. Divorce Catherine Aragon. Marry Anne Boleyn. Pope no. Henry. Fine. Start own church. Did. Church England. Himself head. But Henry didn't stop. 1536, 1541. Systematically dissolved every monastery, convent England. All. Over 800 religious houses, approximately 10,000 monks, nuns gone, closed, crown seized. Libraries destroyed, scattered, scraps sold, toilet paper used. Not joking documented monastery manuscripts, outhouse material. Dissolution monasteries, among many things, greatest biblioclasm book destruction, Western history. But authorities didn't count nuns, just accept, move on. Resisted. Primary way, saving books. Dissolution officers, closing convents' inventory value. Gold, silver, land, buildings, books. At least valuable looking, like gold leaf illuminated manuscripts. Seized, sold. But other books, simpler prayer books, breviaries, hours books, psalters, didn't look valuable bureaucrats basically inventorying forced sale. Nuns often kept slipped family-sympathetic locals, anyone hide till danger passed. Heartbreaking inventory, 1538 small convent Wilton Abbey. Dissolution officer writes, nuns taken books, hidden, cannot find all, claim none, no lying. Of course lying, wouldn't you? So next 60 years, Edward VI, Mary Jean, Elizabeth of France reigns England, pinballed Protestant Catholic Protestant. Books stayed hidden, waiting, hoping safe emerge. Time never came. Early 1600s, clear England remain Protestant. Catholic religious life illegal, stay illegal. None? Leave country. So left, took books. Imagine one woman. Name Anne, Mary, Elizabeth, good English Catholic names. Grew hearing stories, old days, pre-Reformation, England convents, monasteries. Perhaps grandmother nun, pre-dissolution. Perhaps book belonged her. Prayer book name, written front. Hidden family attic, 60 years. Feel called religious life. Want none, but no England convents. Go abroad. Leave family, friends, country, probably forever. Never see England again. Die foreign land, buried strangers. Take grandmother's prayer book, only English Catholic history piece left. Last thread connecting severed religious tradition. Multiply story thousands women. Start understand English exile convents. Living museums. English Catholic culture repositories. Books. Identity preserved Belgium, France, Portugal. Couldn't survive England. First English exile convent, Brussels, 1598. Those women leaving Dover. Benedictines, re-establishing 60-year destroyed community. First things, post building, financial stability, start library, wrote England sympathetic Catholic families donations, old books, pre-Reformation prayer books, breviaries, anything, rebuild lost, people sent, old, hidden, dangerous books, gathering attic dust decades, waiting purpose, suddenly purpose again. Go Brussels, English convent, Cambrai, France, Lisbon, dozen English convents founded Catholic Europe. By 1700, about 22 English exile convents, total population perhaps 500 nuns. Nearly all libraries, some small, some substantial. Many books England come, smuggled channel, carrying Catholic England memory, no longer existed. Let me tell man, understanding libraries, importance, almost anyone. Father Augustine Baker, Benedictine monk, also exile, 1620s, 1630s, spiritual director, English Benedictine nuns, Cambrai. First realized women need books prayer, mysticism, deep interior spiritual life development. But books hard find. Many English, probably pre-Reformation, published now scarce. Existing, many index, officially forbidden. So Baker became book smuggler. Wonderful letter wrote struggling find appropriate nun books. Paraphrasing 17th century English. Used all contacts, Catholic, Protestant, hunt mystical texts. Found private collections, old monastery libraries, somehow still existed. Protestant bookshop sellers unaware had. Then get Cambrai smuggling international borders, past customs, looking exactly contraband. Books, mental prayer, mystical experience, direct God communion, dangerous even Catholic countries seeming bypass clerical authority. But Baker persisted. Years built impressive spiritual book collection, Cambrai nuns, medieval English mystics, like Walter Hilton, Richard Rolla, contemplative prayer books, teaching women direct personal God relationships, sans priest mediation. Inquisition, eventually suspicious Baker's teachings. Fled Cambrai. But books stayed. Library built, survived. Now, what makes exile libraries fascinating, international? Books moved convents different countries, creating early modern interloan. Convent Brussels might book sisters Lisbon wanted. Send trusted courier, traveling friar. Arrive Portugal. Lisbon nuns read, perhaps copy time, resources. Send back on, France convent, keep, send different exchange. Books circulating underground network English Catholic women, continent spread. Information, ideas, spiritual teachings, flowing channels. English government couldn't control. Inquisition didn't fully know. Operated official censorship radar. Beautiful, subversive, worked. Books surviving today, inscriptions, chains tell story. Open 17th century book, C, from English Benedictines Brussels. Below, given English Poor Clare's Gravelines 1643. Then, transferred English Augustinians Paris 1689. Books lives traveled, shared communities understanding books too precious hoard. Knowledge meant circulate. Let me tell one specific book capturing whole story perfectly. Psalter Psalms book printed, Antwerp 1610. Beautiful edition, famous Plantin Press, musical notation psalms sung. Particular copy ended English Benedictine Convent Brussels. Over centuries, nuns added inscriptions, different names, dates, handwritings. By French Revolution forcing convent, close 1790s, Psalter inscriptions, least 6 nuns spanning 180 years. Read used, cherished generations. When convent closed, someone unknown insured book survived. Took, protected. Today, Salter Downside Abbey England collection, made home. After 200 years exile, used, cherished generations English-Belgium nuns returned England. Inscription chain ended began. That book survivor. Survived women cared, preserve, pass, ensure not lost. But exile libraries not preserving old English books, creating new. Nuns, exile writing chronicles, spiritual treatises, translations, letters. Documenting experiences, communities, spiritual lives. Remarkable Chronicle English, Poor Clare's Gravelines, Belgium. Covers 1608, 1790s, nearly 200 years convent history, written successive nun generations, each continuing last. What's Chronicle? Everything. New members joining, death records, prayers, visions, miracles descriptions, local authority conflicts, books received, sent other convents, English Civil War stories affecting community, though Belgium, reflections, English Catholic exile, meaning cut home, but keeping identity alive, prayer, books, shared memory, chronicle incredible historical document, insight women's self-view, mission understanding, maintaining community centuries. Exist successive nun generations thought important continue writing. Historians preserving not past alone, own present future. Now something seeming paradoxical. Convents exile Protestantism, banned Catholic religious life. Refugees fleeing persecution. But reading books, many Catholic authorities also considered dangerous mystical texts, emphasizing personal experience over church authority. English scripture translations, Index forbidden. Spiritual writings interpretable, Protestant leaning. So women caught weird middle. 2 Catholic Protestant England. 2 independent Catholic Inquisition. Preserving English Catholic spirituality, tradition, emphasizing interiority, personal prayer. Direct God relationship ideas, making both Protestant Catholic authorities nervous. Got away partly exile outside normal control structures. Far Rome, Spanish Inquisition, English government. Small scattered communities, unimportant draw official attention. Flying radar, gave freedom not total. Enough read, write, think ways, impossible, more visible, powerful, scrutinized. Sometimes marginalization creates innovation space. Sometimes exile means free. Here's something breaking heart. Most English convents eventually closed. French Revolution forced many shut, relocate. Napoleonic Wars disrupted others. Mid-1800s. Catholic religious life, legal England again. Many exile communities returned home. Returned. Brought libraries. Books Belgium, 200 years back England. Books survived Reformation, Civil War, French Revolution, wars, plagues, fires, plagues. But not all. Some lost transitions. Some sold convents, closed needed money. Some disappeared, scattered history winds. Today, scholars piecing exile libraries contained, tracking surviving books, reading inscriptions, reconstructing networks, who owned what, sent whom. Detective work, ideas archaeology. Every book found, inscription decoded, tells more remarkable women keeping English Catholic culture alive exile, preserving books odds, creating intellectual communities lasting centuries. As prepare leave exile convents, think preserving culture exile means. Maintaining identity cut homeland, building libraries foreign countries, knowing might never home, hoping someday perhaps not lifetime books return. That's faith, not religious alone, future, preservation matters. Books carry essential, worth saving, even high cost. And right. Those books mattered. Libraries survived. Today, read words English Catholic women wrote Exile. Trace book networks. Kept tradition alive, seemed might die. But not only women writing books challenging authority, pushing boundaries, making powerful nervous. While English nuns preserving mystical texts Exile, another woman completely different creating autobiography, raw, honest, utterly unconcerned people, thought her nearly burned heretic multiple times. Name Margery Kempe. Couldn't read, write. Middle-class housewife, mother. Somehow managed create books survived 500 years, giving vivid medieval female spirituality portraits ever written. How? That's story turning next. Because Margery's book testament, something powerful, don't need educated voice, don't need literate create literature, just need something say, willing fight, right say it. And Margery Kempe had lots say. She's standing heresy trial again. Perhaps fourth, fifth, honestly lost count. Year 1417. Place Leicester, England. Mayor absolutely convinced Margery Kempe Lollard heretic, deserving stake burn. Evidence? Woman talking God lot constantly, actually. Cried church loudly, people complained. Wore white clothes, claimed God told where. Traveled England, even pilgrimages, Jerusalem, Rome sans husband. Most damning, preached. Talked scripture, theology, personal Jesus visions. Public, crowds-like thought authority. Women didn't authority. Women certainly didn't preach. Women claiming visions, probably demon-possessed. Women traveling sans male supervision? Definitely heretics. Mayor wanted burned. Crowd restless. Someone already grabbed. Threatened throw fire. Things looking really bad. Then Margery did always trouble. Started talking, quoted scripture, told vision stories, defended eloquently, passionately, obvious sincerity, faith. Eventually, authorities, grudgingly, let go again. Because here's thing Margery Kempe. Illiterate. Couldn't read, couldn't write, never formally educated. Middle-class housewife, worked brewer, ran horse mill business. Absolutely no business knowing much scripture knew. Theologically sophisticated was. Surviving many heresy trials, survived. Yet did all. Then somehow managed create book first English autobiography surviving 500 years, telling more medieval female spirituality almost any source. How? How illiterate woman create book? That's question about answer. Trust, answer surprise. Let's start beginning. Margery Kempe, born around 1373. King's Lynn, prosperous Norfolk, England market town. Father prominent businessman, money, status. So Margery grew comfortably, if not wealthy. Married young, perhaps age 20. Man named John Kempe. Then did women time expected. Started children lot. 14 exactly. 14 pregnancies, birth time, childbirth leading women death cause. After first child born, Margery had what we'd call severe postpartum mental health crisis. Describes terrifying detail book, demons surrounding bed, telling damned. Tried hurt self. Couldn't sleep, eat, function. 8 months, own words, outmind. This 1394. No therapy, medication, postpartum depression understanding. Went mad. People assumed demon-possessed, God-punished. Margery's family tried everything. Brought priests pray. Restrained hurt self. Nothing worked. Then, according Margery, Jesus appeared. Sat bed. Looked love, compassion. Said, Daughter, why forsaken me? I never forsook you. Just like, well again, instantly, demons vanished, mind cleared, back. Interpret story want, perhaps genuine mystical experience, perhaps brain chemistry normalized, interpreted religious framework understood. Doesn't matter purposes. Matters. Moment on. Margery believed special God relationship, believed God spoke directly, believed duty share God told. Over next years, Margery tried normal life. More children, ran businesses, first brewery, horse mill. Both failed spectacularly. Later interpreted God telling focus spiritual matters money, but kept religious experiences, visions, overwhelming emotion moments, weep uncontrollably. Hours sometimes. Voices heard Christ speaking. Instructions, telling beloved. Believed emotional responses, spiritual matters, prayer form. Participating Christ's suffering. Deep God love sign. Modern scholars' theories happening. Perhaps neurological condition. Perhaps medieval mysticism, common religious ecstasy form. Perhaps performance demonstrate holiness. Whatever, made memorable. Nobody met Margery Kempe forgot. Memorability probably helped book survive, people remembered story. Told others. Kept memory alive death. So, how illiterate weeping middle-class housewife end book? Here's happened. Around 1432, 1433, Margery, about 60, found priest willing write story. Actually, two priests. First started writing, died finished. Second picked first left. Margery dictated. Told whole life story madness post-childbirth, visions, pilgrimages, Jerusalem, Rome, Santiago Compostela, multiple heresy arrests, arguments, bishops, mayors, fellow Christians thought crazy, demon-possessed, annoying. Told negotiations, husband yes, negotiated John Kempe marriage. Wanted live chastely, dedicate God fully, sans marital relations distraction. He wanted husbands typically wanted. Made deal, agree chastity, she'd pay debts. Agreed. Shook public witnesses. Imagine medieval woman negotiating marriage terms, husband, writing official, unheard. Told spiritual experiences, vivid sensory detail. Conversations, Christ calling daughter, promising saved. Biblical event visions felt actually participating. Mystical God marriages. Revelations heaven, hell, who. Held nothing. Wasn't sanitized. Edited spiritual memoir make look good. Raw, honest, sometimes embarrassing. Admitted pride, vanity, enjoying fine clothes, fancy food. Admitted first visions, unsure, God, devil. Admitted lots, people thought annoying. Book called Book Margery Kempe, unlike anything medieval literature. Intimate, chaotic, emotional, honest ways most medieval religious writing wasn't. Then written, basically disappeared 500 years. No existed excerpts, printed early 1500s. Short passages presenting Margery Nice, quiet anchoress woman, walled cell prey. Hilarious no real Margery, traveled thousands miles, far quiet get, but full manuscript lost. Scholars knew existed once, assumed destroyed, probably English Reformation, many Catholic texts burned. 500 years, Margery's full story missing. Then 1934, back ping pong cabinet someone found. England family cleaning country house, storage cupboard behind old sports equipment, manuscript. Brought scholar examine, scholar realized. This lost book, Margery Kempe, only surviving copy, earliest English autobiography, written woman illiterate woman, somehow managed create remarkable medieval literature documents. Manuscript dirty, worn, obviously well read. Someone treasured, read often, pages smudged, dog-eared. Then somewhere, gotten hidden. Perhaps Reformation. Perhaps later, stayed hidden, forgotten centuries till 1934 daylight. Here's most powerful Margery's story. Didn't need literate voice. Found other ways. Dictated. Talked. Made memorable. Impossible ignore. Though couldn't write. Words written. Not just transcribing priests. Throughout life, Margery people writing letters, recording prophecies, documenting visions, used literate around scribes, made voice heard them. This scholars call collaborative literacy, idea literacy, not individual skill, social practice. Don't need read-write self-access, people do you. Margery, despite illiterate, access. New network, find sympathetic scribes, get story preserved. This how revolutions happen. Not dramatic moment. Countless small defiance acts, generations till suddenly impossible, inevitable. Those hidden libraries? Not history, not past alone. About every person told can't learn, read, think selves. About underestimated, censored, silenced. About knowledge power, impossibility, locking away forever. About us believing ideas, books, intellectual freedom matter. So here's women hid books. Here's readers, writers, secret librarians. Here's everyone defied censorship form. Here's long tradition protecting knowledge, passing forward, refusing let anyone decide access. Their libraries hidden, legacy open. Every library, bookshelf, free mind question, she wonder, learn. And legacy hours carry forward. Thank taking time journey. Thank listening courage, defiance, written word power stories. Hope made think. Hope made feel. Hope inspired. Resonated. Made see history differently. Inspired leave comment. Tell. Book changed life? Book think everyone read? Book you'd hide wall future generations find? Read every comment, genuinely curious. Stories matter too. Haven't already, subscribe, channel so many untold stories. So many history voices deserve heard. Next time, diving another mystery textbooks forgot mention. Trust won't want miss. Till then, keep reading, questioning, learning, protecting intellectual freedom forms. Remember, part tradition centuries back. Every pick book, honoring everyone, fought right do so. Those women hidden libraries, they'd proud you. Take care yourselves. Take care each other.